When I first, over the summer, I received a congratulatory text that my scores were the highest in the county, and I was kind of surprised because I had a group that was somewhat weak.
Where do you teach? Do you mind if I ask?
Oh, sorry. I teach 8th grade English. I have 54 students, and I also have 124 AIS students that I see.
Which school district?
At West Canada Valley
West Canada, okay.
District. So I was surprised, and then when I looked at my scores, I was shocked because it said that just 35% of my kids had passed. And I thought, wow, if that's the best in the county and higher than the state average, then we must really be in trouble. And then I saw the media hype, things are different this year, it's a baseline score. And with that, I will concur, things are certainly different this year. In the past, we always had access to state test questions, and we used those productively. My building principal, Mr. Sutliff, was very good about using Cognos to compile information, to take the test questions. We met on a monthly basis by grade level, and we looked at those questions, and we talked about our kids, and we talked about what can we do better for them, and how can we improve our teaching, how can we use these tests and these scores to improve our teaching. And while since, I guess 2 years ago, maybe 3, the test questions have become the state's dirty little secret, with the exception of the pineapple in the hair, of course, which was released to the press before the test was even scored. So that's a change, that's what's different, and I don't see it as a good difference. Also in the past, we had curriculum mapping teams. We met with a spirit of collegiality to plan our curriculums, and I was fortunate enough, well, I say fortunate, in the summer of 2011, I went to a Common Core Network team meeting in Albany, and I had mustered up the courage, you can see I'm not very courageous, but I mustered up the courage to speak with Commissioner King myself, because I wanted to ask him, these curriculum maps that we've been realigning to match the Common Core standards, I wanted to ask him, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't for naught, because I'd heard rumors that we were getting a canned curriculum. And I wanted to make sure that all the work that we had put into it wouldn't be tossed out. And so I asked him, and he assured me, no, that we would be able to use our own curriculums in our classroom.
Can you hold on one second?
Sorry, I'm talking fast, I'm nervous.
Can we get a table and some chairs? This is more of a conversation. I don't want people to be
I'm
nervous.
sorry.
Do you mind if I get you a table and a chair so you can relax and just talk to us?
I guess I was surprised then when that very fall, I came into school and I was marched down to Herkimer County BOCES, and I was given a curriculum courtesy of Bill and Melinda Gates, and that was my curriculum. That was what I was instructed to use for that year. And I have to say that it was not grade level appropriate. It wasn't totally aligned to the Common Core, and it didn't at all match the interdisciplinary projects that we had developed over the many years that I've been fortunate enough to work at West Canada. So that was that year. Then this past year, I received another shipment. These are the modules.
Okay.
I have a whole stack of them in a corner collecting dust in my room. I'm not using the module.
Okay.
I teach 8th grade. I know that I need to engage my students, and I know that, well, To Kill a Mockingbird is there. That's done in 9th grade, and the omnivore's dilemma just isn't going to do it for my 8th graders. So I'm using the curriculum that I had in place. I have real issues with the curriculum that's being provided, and I just, if I could give you a quick example of that. I teach a novel. It's called Night John. It's a Gary Paulson. It's a quick read. The Lexile level, the reading level, may very well be 3rd grade. However, the content level involves the forced breeding of slaves in the breeding shed, and as soon as the girls have their menstrual cycle, it involves slave punishments like cutting off middle toes, and it involves also one of the slaves is castrated. And so I was surprised when my building level principal, we were having this discussion of modules, and he said, well, you know, you're doing night job, and that's on a 3rd and 4th grade reading level for one of the curriculum programs, not the one that we are using, but one that's available online. And to me, that illustrates what's wrong with having publishing companies instead of educators develop curriculum. Because while the Lexile level might be appropriate, the content clearly isn't. I mean, my 8th graders have a hard time wrapping their heads around that. And so this curriculum we're being mandated to use, that's a difference that I see is not a good one either this year. And the final thing is my students. This past year was the first year I had students cry. They didn't have enough time to complete the test. 90 minutes a day for 3 days straight wasn't enough time. There was too much material, it was miscalculated. My very brightest students were trying to finish and couldn't, and one of my colleagues said, well, just have them fill in anything so the lines are full so that they can at least grade something. And I said, no, my students are conscientious, thoughtful students, and they're conscientious, thoughtful writers. And I said to them, you write until the time is up and close your book. And many of them didn't finish, and it was frustrating for them, and it was heartbreaking to watch. In my opinion, you know, I've heard, my issue isn't so much with the standards, but I believe that the way they're being implemented right now is disastrous. I think it's awful. And, you know, it's been compared to, building the airplane while it's in flight. Well, I think of it in relation to the advice I gave my students. I feel like the state is trying to fill in the lines to meet a deadline, and it's not working. And I'm not sure what I can ask you to do about that. But I would say if there's some way to stop the testing, because it's hurting students, at least for now, because it's inappropriate and it's hurting students and it's not helping us.
Now, that's a stand back, you know, coming back, saying, okay, we'll accept this, that, okay, the standards aren't that bad, but the standards are part of all of this. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Right.
I mean, so this is like, that's sort of like a compromise position, that the standards, you know, well, we can live with the standards. But, I mean, if you've looked at it, I believe the standards work their way backwards, from college down, and they're not in line. That's the problem. Would you agree with that?
I feel that with years worth of scaffolding and building, our students are capable of reaching them, but it's going to take years.
Yeah, but it should be developmentally appropriate.
Absolutely.
At each stage.
And right now it's not.
And then you teach in a classroom. Do you have an inclusion classroom?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And the material that you've seen with the inclusion classroom, does it address kids with learning disabilities or kids with IEPs, or does it basically leave them floundering behind, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think it leaves everyone floundering behind.
Right.
And I think it's very difficult for students with disabilities and with the IEPs, and especially these modules that we're receiving, they're totally scripted. So like spend 15 minutes on this, spend 20 minutes on this. My AIS kids, they're all marching to a different beat. There is no scripted way to present this material to them. So I would say that, you know, in terms of using the modules, absolutely not. It doesn't work.
All right. How many teachers do we have in the room? Don't be a... Okay. With that, I'm going to use you to go here. The way I was taught, okay, I went to Plattsburgh to get my education in elementary education. And how I learned was we always teach to the middle of the class. You teach to the middle, then what we may do is give seat work. And that reinforces what we just taught. We may give kids that are a little more advanced a little tougher work just to keep them engaged so they're not bored. But then that gives us an opportunity to go back to the kids that didn't learn, right, or didn't get the concept, to actually work with them on a more individual basis. And from what I see, and children all learn differently. Some are textual, they have to write it down. Some, it's auditory, they have to hear it a lot in order for it to go. And the other one, it's visual, they have to look at it. And what I'm finding is Common Core here, it prohibits a teacher from actually using that model. And these building blocks that these kids are losing, all right, they're never going to be able to catch up. The teachers, anybody disagree with that? Teachers in the room? Okay, so, I mean, that's what I'm looking at. When I'm looking at the curriculum, when I'm looking at the modules, when I'm looking at just Common Core in general, okay? Because let's be honest, if you're doing what they're telling you to do, you don't need a teaching degree, okay? We can have a visual teacher up there and just, and give out the instructions and hand out the handouts. Teaching it's a craft, it's a skill, all right? And what we're doing is taking that skill out of teaching with Common Core. You agree?
I would agree with you, yes,
Okay.
at least as far as how, again, we're being asked to implement it, for sure. I really feel like when we were taking the Common Core and we were using our curriculums and revising them, we at least stood a chance to use our craft. And I also went to Plattsburgh too, by the way. But we at least stood a chance. Now we don't even have a chance. That's how I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Question. First of all, what you just said, I think, is exactly where this should have been in terms of developing a curriculum. It's taking the professionals, letting them come up with something that I'm sure would have been a far superior product than what's getting thrown up on Engage New York on a regular basis. But you mentioned scaffolding and having the time over the years for this to go in, and you teaching at 8th grade, I think, is a good person to ask this question to, because we all know this was developed backwards. They went to what they wanted you to know at college and worked backwards through each grade. And when this now has been put into the entire educational realm, in grade school all at once, you're kind of making an assumption that 8th grader learned something in 7th grade and 6th grade and 5th grade, so on down, that they didn't, because this is all brand new. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us what your experience has been in terms of having to go back and hit things that now are expected under the Common Core standards at the lower grade levels.
Well, it is. It's very frustrating. And the thing is that you can't just hand someone a book of a higher Lexile level and say, here you go, now you're meeting the Common Core standards, and it's that easy. There's a big part of this that's the close reading, where it's reading over and over just to try to attempt to get meaning out of it. And at the 8th grade level, I'm telling you, you can't engage students and try to do that, in my opinion. So it's very frustrating and very difficult for a regular ed student. And like I said, for a student with disabilities, it's even more difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and I guess I'm a little baffled about the whole language there. The standardized test, you're actually testing on the Common Core standards or Common Core curriculum with a standardized test?
I believe last year it was Common Core. Well, at one year it was going to turn over from the regular standards to Common Core.
So as a result of these standardized tests, there are 4 levels. 4 levels? Or,
grade levels?
well, I mean, you get graded 4, 3, 2.
Yeah.
All right. I guess my question is, if you or your students or your school get 1s and the 2s, who crafts the remediation program? Where does the remediation come from? Because it sounds like that's done in the cloud and not at a local level, where I think it ought to be. Where does efforts at remediation, when these standardized tests identify some deficiency, who makes the plan to resolve that or solve the problems that become apparent?
In my case, at my district, I do, because I have AIS grade 7 through 11. So I've come up with a program at each grade level, and my overall goal is the LA 11 because they need that to graduate.
So it's not Bill and Melinda Gates that are sending you a remedial packet
Not
for
yet,
your
but,
ones
you
and
know, that
twos?
could be in the cards.
Okay, all right, that's
I mean, that
my
would be
concern.
maybe the next step, or
Yeah.
right now we're using the American company, so they're probably having our modules.
The America Company.
Yeah, I believe, let me make sure, America company, or American.
Now, do they have access to these test results and, you know, some of this information about the students? Okay.
No, about my particular students, no, they do not, no.
Not through the In Bloom program or anything like that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments.